Thanks for that, Steve. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to another Wednesday night Zoom meeting. My recital tonight is Clark Terry. Clark Terry, an American swing and bebop trumpeter, a pioneer of the flugelhorn in jazz, a composer and an educator. His early life, Terry was born to Clark Vigil Terry Sr. and Mary Terry in St. Louis, Missouri, on December the 14th, 1920. He attended Vision High School. He began his professional career in the early 1940s, playing in local clubs. He also served as a bandsman in the United States Navy during the World War II. His first instrument, however, was the valve trombone, of which we will hear more about that particular instrument later. He played with Charlie Barnett in 1947, Count Basie in 1948 to 51, Duke Ellington 51 to 59, Quincy Jones in 1960, Oscar Peterson between 1964 and 1996. He also was on the Tonight program show from 1962 to 1972. His career in jazz spanned more than 70 years, during which he became the most recorded jazz musician, appearing on more than 900 recordings. Terry also mentored Quincy Jones, Miles Davis, Herbie Hancock, Wynton Marsalis, Pat Metheny, and Diane Reeves. Now then, the first three tracks are with the bands he played with in the 40s and 50s, which were Charlie Barnett, Count Basie, and Duke Ellington. And the first one I'm going to play, as you can see, probably is the Charlie Barnett. Now, there's a character, to say the least. He already was a millionaire when he started playing. And I believe he had at least 10 wives. And God knows how many, what do you call it, for divorces and one thing and another, all over the place. Anyhow, here we go with the Charlie Barnett playing Rocking in Rhythm. Charlie Barnett, what a character. Ha, the next track is the Count Basie track. And what's it called? Pound Cake is the title of the track. Um, yeah, and when he joined the Basie band, that was some kind of a back row that he joined with the likes of Harry Sweet Edison and Emmett Berry and goodness knows who. Uh, okay, then we'll do Count Basie, Pound Cake. From early 40s, one. Count Basie, Pound Cake. The next one we're actually here actually because we weren't sure. I'm not sure, it wasn't featured on some of the early recordings. But this one is a bit of a nod to Duke Ellington, who played with as well. And this is a tune, a Sea Jam Blues. This Duke with a difference. Now, the people on this recording, Paul Gonzalez, Johnny Hodges, Billy Strayhorn, and on vibes, Thierry Glenn. So here we go with Sea Jam Blues. Sea Jam Blues, Clark Terry. The next track, excuse me, is the tune Stardust. This is from one of his albums entitled Serenade to a Bus Seat. Now, I should imagine that's a reminder from his days on the road with many bands and the many hours he must have spent touring with the bands. Okay, Stardust. Stardust. The next act is a little bit unusual. He's got a guy with him playing the tuba. And this is called a swinging chemise. Now, I'm not quite sure what a chemise is, whether it's I always thought it was something like a shirt or a curtain. I wasn't quite sure. Perhaps the better informed would probably tell me what a chemise is. This is top and bottom brass. Now, I actually thought this guy who plays the tuba might have been in the band called the band. And he was the one that played the tuba in, the day they drove old Dixie down, that that business. And but it turned out he's not. This guy's called Don Butterfield. This is Swinging Chemise. Swinging Chemise, Clark Terry Quintet. The big band era for Clark, blending the St. Louis tone with the contemporary styles. Terry's years with Basie and Ellington, who secretly recruited Terry away from Basie in the late 1940s and the 1950s, established his prominence. During his period with Ellington, he took part in many of the composer's suites and acquired a reputation for his wide ranges of styles, from swing to hard bop. Technical proficiency and good humour. Terry influenced musicians including Miles Davis, Quincy Jones, both of whom acknowledged Terry's influence during their early stages of their careers. Terry had informally taught Davis while they were still in St. Louis, and Jones during Terry's frequent visits to Seattle with the Count Basie Sextet. After leaving Ellington in 1959, Clark's international recognition soared when he accepted an offer from the national broadcasting company NBC to become a staff musician. He appeared for 10 years on The Tonight Show as a member of The Tonight Show band until 1972, first led by Sketch Henderson and later by Dr. Venison, where his unique mumbling scat singing led to a hit with Mumbles. Terry was the first African-American to become a regular in a band on a major US television network. He said later, we had to be models because I knew we were in a test. We couldn't have a speck on our trousers, we couldn't have a wrinkle in our clothes, and we certainly couldn't have a dirty shirt. Okay, so we move on now to one of his collaborations, and this one is with Thelonious Monk, and it's a tune called In Orbit. In Orbit, Thelonious Monk, Clark Terry Quintet. Terry continued to play with musicians such as trombonist J.J. Johnson and pianist Oscar Peterson. and led a group with valve trombonist Bob Brookmeyer that achieved some success in the early 60s. In February 1965, Brookmeyer and Turry appeared on BBC Jazz 625, and in 1967 presented by Norman Granz. He was recorded at Poplar Town Hall in the BBC series Jazz at the Philharmonic alongside James Moody, Dizzy Gillespie, Coleman Hawkins, Benny Carter, Teddy Wilson, and T-Bone Walker. And speaking of Bob Brookmeyer, we're going to play from one album 2 tracks, and the first of this album is called Gingerbread Boy.
Gingerbread boy, a little gingerbread boy, a little gingerbread boy. Gingerbread boy. Gingerbread boy, gingerbread boy, nice little gingerbread boy.
Gingerbread Boy. The next track is a nod towards Johnny Hodges, of course. This is a tune entitled Mood Indigo. Mood Indigo. The next is another collaboration, this time with Oscar Peterson. We had quite a long stint with Oscar. This is entitled, the Oscar Peterson Trio, as it says, +1. And the name of this one is Squeaky's Blues. Oh, sorry. I'll let it run. This is My Heart Belongs to Daddy. This is the other guy with the tune again, John Butterfield. Heart Belongs to Daddy, Clark Terry Quintet. I don't know how to end with the flyer or not. I tell you what, we'll try Donna Lee. This is from the album The Serenade to a Bus Seat again. This is Donna Lee with Clark Terry Quintet. Donna Lee, Clark Terry Quintet. Do you think that's time enough? What do you think? I have a short one, a 4-minute one. If you want to carry on, just the next one.
Yeah, play one more.
Play one more. Okay. This one is a bit of a slower one, I think. This is Morning Mist with Clark Terry and Bob Brookmeyer. This is from the Gingerbread album again. Okay, that concludes the first half of the recital. Thank you. Thanks again. Well, welcome back to the second half. I do hope you'll forgive me. I have quite a bit of Clark Cherry and Bob Brookmeyer, who I quite like, so I tend to put things on that I do like. Anyway, this one is now Ode to the Flugelhorn, and this is on an album called The Power of Positive Swinging, and this is Clark Cherry and Bob Brookmeyer. Ode to the Flugelhorn. Ode to a Furlong. Sorry. Sorry about that. In the 1970s, Terry concentrated increasingly on the flugelhorn, which he played with a full ringing tone, in addition to his studio work and teaching at jazz workshops. Terry toured regularly and in the 1980s with small groups, including Peterson's, and performed as the leader of his big band, BAD, formed about 1970 after financial difficulties forced him to break up the Big Bad Band. He performed with bands such as the Unifor Jazz Ensemble. His humour and his command of jazz and trumpet styles are apparent in his dialogues with himself on different instruments or on the same instrument, muted or unmuted. And talking about a little bit of humour, here he is on the Gingerbread album again, and this is My Gal.
From the ground. Yes, my girl's got great big legs. Oh, they're terrible, you ought to see it, David. And she's built up from the ground, built like a brick shipyard. I'm telling you, you ought to see it, David. You know, every time I see her coming near, what happened? Woo! My love just comes tumbling down, just like that. That's right, absolutely. My gal's a mean, mistreating woman. She don't mean no one man no good.
What you doing with her then? What you doing with her then?
I don't know, David. I'm telling you, I've lost a lot of sleep about that woman. My gal's a low down, dirty, stinking, greasy, mean, mistreating woman. Don't mean no one man no good.
Yeah, you better check her out. You better check her out.
I'm gonna do something worse than that too. She gonna prove me out soon. But then again, you know, I don't blame that woman, David.
Why not? Why not?
Cause I'd be the same way if and I could.
I hear you.
If and I could. If and I could. That's right. I don't know what's wrong with my woman, David.
I do. I know what's wrong.
I wish you'd tell me. She ain't acting right at all. She ain't too cool. I don't know. I'm off my sleep like this. I don't know what's wrong with my woman. Woo!
Go upside her head.
She ain't acting right at all. She ain't acting right at all. But I know what I'm gonna do.
What you gonna do, Clark?
If she don't straighten up and start acting decent, I'ma take back my wig and let her head go bald.
That's dirty.
I know that's dirty.
That's
But
dirty.
she's dirty too. I'm gonna be dirty just like she is. She ain't right. Everybody calls my baby Cushfoot.
Why, man?
Cause her ankles drags the ground. Woo! Yeah, she's terrible. Ain't that mean? Woo-wee. Everybody calls my baby Cushfoot. Cause her ankles drag the ground. Yeah.
They do?
Oh, yeah. But there's one thing that you can bet for sure.
What is that?
And that is that they don't call her that when she's around.
She pretty tough,
She
huh?
mean, oh,
She tough, huh? Tough, bro.
She's tough, man. Let me tell you some more about my woman. I already told you about her big fat feet. Her hips look like two pigs in a gunny sack when she's slush-footing down the street.
Ah.
My gal, short and squatty, stand just about 4.5 feet off the
Tell her
ground.
look at it.
But she gives me the kind of loving that'll make a bulldog hug her house. You know she's mean and short and fat and ugly. I ain't about to let that woman go. No, that's my woman. I ain't about to let her go.
Don't leave her.
She kills me, David. That woman kills me. Ooh-wee. Straight ball fire.
I think we'll continue with a little bit more humour. I'm going to skip a few here. And here we go with Clark Terry and a good friend who used to come to the rhythm station, Red Holloway. There's quite a few guys on this. I'll try and name them later. Okay. Having fun with Clark Terry. Red Holloway. Yeah. Meet the Flintstones. Now then, we'll try a little bit of girl talk. This is from the album Clark After Dark. Girl talk. This is with an orchestra. Peter Boxheimer Orchestra. Whoever he is. Personnel not known. Girl talk. We step it up a little bit now. This is with Thelonious Monk and Sonny Rollins from the album Brilliant Corners. Bemshire Swing. Beshma swing. I think after the thumping of the timpani, I think we'll have a nice quiet one for a change. This is Clark Tracy, because me, Clark Tracy, Clark Terry. This is another one from the Clark After Dark, the ballad artist, Emily. This is also with the orchestra, the people. Actually, Emily. I'm going to turn to the Ray Brown Trio. This is another one of his collaborations. This is on the album Some of My Best Friends Are the Blues. This is called Itty Bitty Blues with Ray Brown. There we go, another collaboration with Ray Brown. Excuse me. This is another one here. Gypsy. This is Remember the Time, and of course, if you can see the other thing on it, it's actually Ray Brown, Jeff Hamilton, Deirdre Maroney, Mark Nightingale, a British trombone player who played the rhythm station, scores of times, a great guy, lovely guy. Okay, and George Robert. Okay, so we're going to have Gypsy Clark Terry. Says he. Mark Nightingale. Terry Gypsy. Now I'm going to play one. I think this should please Alan Brown. This is live at the Newport Jazz Festival, Duke Ellington, and it's Perdido.
Clark Terry. Thank you very much, Clark Terry. And now, Paul Gonzalez and Cop Out. Cop Out.
I'm afraid not.
Well,
Too many choruses, like 30 something to run, I think. Yeah. Sorry about that. Now then, there's one thing that Clark was rather famous for. That was this famous type of scatting. They reckon he created a new language. Well, here he is again with Red Holloway and Major Holly and whatever, with his signature thing, Mumbles.
The how she ain't a hard house, they pull the level to bound. She ain't gonna go down the bound, they go to the level. She had a hand that found the skills, they will let her bounce about them on the way, down, they will live it. She little bit of bar. Woo! She holy built it do. She gonna name on the bound, the hall, they will do the line, they will do the ball. She only on the love now. She only me more now, she goes to bow down. She put the weeds, people bounty, baby. She will live. She ain't all the people who love the fiend to go on the barrel. She ain't the people down, the people see the on the bar, the cow, the beat the ball. She ain't on the bound on the lounge, they will double the babble down. She won't about in the lounge, they hound, they will little level, she bow. T-Von 50 pounds, she will only bowl level. She don't know about. Woo! She who live about the bound. She down, they will live down. She only down. He, who, he, me, who. She don't leave up the bound, they don't down. She only down, they will live She live down, table little but the bound down, the bound down, on the bound down. Sean able to live on the bound to go to be the wall there. No, she won't hold him, but see the people don't live. Woo! She only live the hold the hill, people who live on the bound to go to be along the bound. She found over woo! She don't hold him on the bound now. She don't let him go down. She little to put the bound down. She don't let him lean on that, she won't leave on the ground down. She don't leave, who leave on the bound. She won't leave on that one. Die Fimbler Honda scream, but I happen to hate this fine the car. And the height is called, but the geeks bar for the finger, the hang is klar. Let me scroll the bong, the Honda skin, the Honda from the dawn. It has been all the flame for the scream, but the height is called the guy. explains para de kan de koffie de kai se gege dauga for this porun de haben de hum de hoken kai sein de vein de hoke gege I be spooling my lang la vaige skole laul I be for de hang wat de porn in de fem de kom de hang de hoeke for this plain de choice de hij de gege Josie mooi de keilie Horde voor de hek is klaar, de horde important begin kai voor de vinger kai. Het was daar, de bekatjantie bin, de wordt ook een beetje bij. Het werd gewoon te kai, wat de melkatjai. En de vinger voor de hond is going on, en we vonden on het out, en de spring voor de spam de hand is klaar, voor de spring voor de hand is klaar, en voor de hand is klaar. Peace and love.
Clark Terry. With mumbles, with Red Holloway. In December 2014, Jazz at the Lincoln Center Orchestra with Wynton Marsalis and Cecil McLaurin Salvant visited Terry, who celebrated his 94th birthday on December the 14th at the Jefferson Regional Medical Center. A lively rendition of Happy Birthday was played. On February the 13th, 2015, it was announced that Terry had entered hospice care to manage advanced diabetes. He died on February the 21st, 2015. Writing in the New York Times, Peter Kipnews said Terry was acclaimed for his impeccable musicianship, love for his playful spirit, and respected for his adaptability. Although his sound on bow trumpet and the rounder tone flugelhorn, which he helped to popularize as a jazz instrument, was highly personal and easily identifiable, he managed to fit it snugly into a wide range of musical contents. And I think that ends part 2 of my tribute to Clark Terry. Thank you.